In Pokemon card markets like the one we're seeing right now, you have to be careful what cards you buy and when. Because with all of this hype, the risk of losing your pants is higher than it's ever been before. Good thing I'm not wearing any. I can't tell you which card exactly is going to pop off next, no crystal ball here, but I can give you a framework to help protect yourself from spending $100 or $1,000 on a card today, only to watch it tank in value tomorrow. I've built my own 5-figure Pokemon card collection using the framework we're going to talk about today, and anyone can do it. And I want to start with the most important thing that most people never consider. A Pokemon card that skyrockets in value can't just be a card. It has to be more than that. Let me give you an example. About a year ago, my wife and I went to New Jersey Collecticon. At the time, I was focused on building out my Yu-Gi-Oh collection, specifically getting some choice cards signed by the anime's voice actors. Of course, Pokemon dominated the event. I'd say 90% of people were there for Pokemon, and 90% of the booths were selling it. And in booth after booth, there was one card I saw so often, it kind of felt like I was in some kind of cardboard Twilight Zone. Front and center, slabbed, everywhere. Any guesses? It was the PSA 10 Moonbreon from Evolving Skies. And it didn't matter who you asked. The price was always the same, $800. It became a running joke for us. Every time we saw one, we checked the price tag just to confirm. Sure enough, $800. And here's the thing, those cards moved. They weren't sitting there for weeks, people were buying them in droves. At the time, I thought, beautiful card, sure, but $800 for a modern Pokemon card? That's insane. What I didn't realize was that we were watching history in real time. The story of the modern Pokemon boom was just being written, and at the center of it all was a supersized evolution. Cards like this, the ones that define a moment, lead a movement, or become cultural symbols, can reach astronomical prices. And the opposite is also true. Take pretty much any holo card from Skyridge. These cards are over 25 years old and come from one of the lowest points in Pokemon's history. The game was on the ropes. Many thought it wouldn't recover, but it did. And the story of that comeback is baked into every card from that set, which is part of why they now command such a huge premium. The takeaway? Keep your eyes open. Notice when a card stops just being cardboard and starts becoming part of the franchise's legacy. Ask yourself, is this card tied to a historic moment? Is it leading the market right now? Will people look back and remember it? If the answer is yes, or better yet, if the card story is just now being told, then you're probably onto something. Some cards are rare because there aren't many printed. Others are rare because there aren't many printed correctly. And that second type is sneaky, because it's easy to overlook. See, not all Pokemon cards come out of the pack looking flawless. Some are basically born with scars. Poor centering, silvering along the edges, print lines across the holo, even whitening and corner dings straight from the factory. That means even if a card isn't super hard to pull, finding one that's PSA 10 worthy can be incredibly difficult. And those high-grade copies can become the real price leaders over time. One of the best examples you'll find are the EX era Gold Stars. Even fresh from the pack, many had visible scratches or rough edges. Fast forward to now, and PSA 10 copies of those same cards sell for multiples of what near mint raw versions go for. Not because they're different from other high-end vintage cards, but because there are just so few pristine copies in existence. And it's not just old cards. In fact, modern cards are where things get really interesting, because some modern print runs are notoriously bad. Take the now famous Shinji Kondo Magikarp from Paldea Evolved. Pristine copies of this card are going for close to $2,000 on a regular basis. Don't get me wrong, this card has a lot of things going for it. The art style is gorgeous, and it's a fan favorite Pokemon from a fairly large set. But what most people don't realize is that it's also incredibly difficult to grade. By far the biggest issue you'll find in modern cards is centering. This fish is notorious for crooked prints and lopsided borders, and the PSA population report makes it crystal clear. Most copies sent in never hit the Gem Mint 10 everyone's chasing. In fact, more have graded a PSA 8 than a PSA 10, and nearly 3 times as many have graded a 9. For modern Pokemon, that's almost unheard of. Typically, 30 to 40% of copies earn a 10. Here, it's closer to 20%. So the takeaway, when you're eyeing a card, especially slabs, don't just ask, how hard is it to pull? Ask yourself, are Gem Mint copies hard to find? Does this set have any known print issues? How many PSA 10s exist compared to the 8s and 9s? If the numbers point to scarcity at the top grade, you might be looking at a card with some serious long-term potential. This one takes a tiny bit of math, but stick with me, it's worth it. I do this every time I'm considering a big purchase, and it's surprisingly simple. Just ask yourself, if I tried to pull this card right now, how much would it actually cost me? Let's use Moonbreon again. Right now, a booster box of Evolving Skies, a set that's only about 4 years old, goes for around $2,400. I'll give us all a minute or two for that to sink in. Okay, now the pull rate for any specific VMAX alt art, like Moonbreon, is roughly 1 in 1,650 packs, or about 1 in every 46 booster boxes. Do the math and you're looking at over $110,000 in sealed product just to have a decent shot at pulling one, given average odds. And if you want that gem mint copy everyone's after, thankfully, Moonbreon is actually one of the easier modern cards to grade, with about a 70% PSA 10 rate. Still, factoring that in pushes your pull cost for a PSA 10 copy to over $150,000. So suddenly, a $3,000 price tag on an already graded Moonbreon doesn't look quite so crazy. In fact, it starts to make a little sense. Of course, Moonbreon isn't the only hit in Evolving Skies, but nothing else in the set really comes close in price. And that's the key. When a set has one card that towers above the rest, the cost to pull it can create a built-in floor for its market value. This works for vintage too, but in a slightly different way. Since sealed product is scarcer, pack prices can get downright absurd, meaning the cost to pull will always look less favorable. But if you run this calculation often enough, you'll start to spot patterns. Cards with insane cost to pull numbers, especially from out-of-print sets, tend to have the most potential for sudden spikes when the wider community catches on. The next point is related, but still way too overlooked. We've all been in this situation. You've got your eye on a card, you want it, but the price makes you hesitate. You start going back and forth. Should I grab it now? Should I wait? And before you know it, someone else has bought it. But here's the good news. There is a way to cut through that decision paralysis. And all the information you need is free and right at your fingertips. Card availability isn't just about how many are on eBay right now. For modern cards, that number doesn't tell you much. Print runs are massive, and listings can pop in and out daily. But Pokemon's obsession with grading actually gives us a secret weapon: the PSA population report. Collectors in this hobby grade everything, and if a card has even a little demand, people have sent it in. The pop report shows you exactly how many have been graded, broken down by condition, giving you a much clearer picture of how many are really out there. Again, take the Shinji Kondo Magikarp from Paldea Evolved. You'd expect the pop report to be huge given the demand for graded copies, but it's actually much lower than comparable chase cards like Moonbreon or the 151 Charizard SIR. That tells you copies aren't surfacing as often, which is valuable info if you're on the fence. For vintage, pop reports can work even better, but here, websites like TCG Player and Card Market are also super helpful. A little while back, I had my eye on the Mew from Southern Islands, the big chase card of the set. I was looking for a binder copy, so I didn't need it to be pristine, but when I checked, only a few were listed for under $100, and then the rest jumped straight up to $150 plus. That was all I needed to see. I grabbed a $90 mod play copy, and a few days later, the cheapest available was already $150, even at heavy play. The takeaway? If a pop report is low and listings are drying up, that might be a sign to not wait. The next price jump might already be in motion. The last part of the framework I'm going to leave you with might just be the most important thing moving forward. Sometimes it's not the Pokemon on the card that makes it valuable, it's the person who drew it. Pokemon has had hundreds of illustrators over the years, but a handful have built almost cult-like followings. Mitsuhiro Rita, Kagamaru Himeno, Yuki Mori with her clay Pokemon figures. Even if you don't know the names, you've probably seen their work, and maybe even paid a little extra for it without realizing why. For some collectors, chasing a specific artist is just as important as chasing the Pokemon itself. When you get a perfect storm, a fan favorite Pokemon and a beloved illustrator, demand can go through the roof. That's why cards like Mizutani's poncho-wearing Pikachu or Mori's quirky clay promos keep strong prices long after release. But here's where things get really interesting, and where we all need to be a little careful. The art on Pokemon cards is going through a renaissance. For years, Pokemon mostly stuck to safe, familiar styles, but starting in the Scarlet and Violet era, we've seen an explosion of new art styles, bold colors, abstract motifs, and wildly different interpretations of Pokemon we've known for decades. Collectors are loving it, and rightly so. Fresh, varied artwork is great for the game. But here's the catch. Right now, these experimental styles are still rare. The novelty is part of what drives excitement and value. And if Magic the Gathering has taught us anything, it's that once a trend catches on, companies tend to keep going, and going, and going, until it's no longer quite as special. Already, in the upcoming Mega Evolution set, you can see the Pokemon Company pushing further with experimental designs. Artists like Shinji Kondo are only just getting started. And while that's exciting, it also means the cards that stand out now might feel less unique a few years down the road. So the takeaway is this: when you see a card that combines a beloved Pokemon with a beloved artist and a brand new art style, consider picking it up if the price is still reasonable. The Pokemon art renaissance has begun, and the winners will be the cards that captured the magic before it became the norm. Alright, now you have the framework that I use to build a 5-figure Pokemon card collection. And if you use it every time on purchases moving forward, you'll be right about 90% of the time. Thanks for watching.